Awesome. No, yeah, genuinely thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. I know it's a pain in the ass sometimes to come all the way down here.
This was easy.
But you doing it in person, like I have done some remotely and love them, very appreciative of all these things.
Yeah.
But like, you can't replace this.
I like the in-person stuff for sure whenever you can do it. So
it's so funny. Just before we hit record, we're talking about like the slow downturn and how it's not doesn't even make sense to go start knocking on doors, because you think, knock on doors and get some sales, but it's like you're spending money on salespeople or you're doing it yourself and it takes time, or you're spending money on processes or you're spending money on marketing. It's so counterintuitive nowadays, but like I feel, take a deep breath, that's what you got to do. Like, how are you guys doing it?
Well, same thing. Like, that's the same way we're thinking about it too. It's like, I mean, it's me. When I say we, it's me. But it's like it's counterintuitive to start spending money too. But then all of a sudden, like, we had a few bids here over the last little while. And
awesome.
Who knows how those are going to go? But I was like, okay, what happens if we win one of those? I didn't spend any money. I thought about doing all this business process stuff, buying a little software, make my life easier, and then I didn't do it. I'm like, oh shit! When the bids came in, I was like, oh boy, that would have been easier if I had done that. Like when I thought I was going to do it, but then I went back to my, like I said, your sort of nature of not doing it. So we're going to do that. Like part of it is me getting an office, getting a little more routine, getting downtown. Because even just going downtown, I'm running into people and
like 100%. I remember even when Pipestone was getting kicked off, they had an office space down in Mindapore, and they realized very quickly, it's like, all the clients, all the coffees, all the lunches, like every single thing is downtown.
Well, even now it's like it's not busy every day of the week, but that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is pretty steady these days. They say, because there's still people who will take the Mondays and Fridays off, work from home. Now they have that option, and we'll see how the cold weather impacts that too. But there's a little more buzz downtown, like a little more activity, like not much going on, but there's people out and about at least. So
I think so. I think we have another, I can say a couple weeks before all the out of office kind of emails start coming on. So we're just doing one last push. And whatever that looks like.
Definitely. And I'm leaving. I'm supposed to leave next Wednesday, week today, for Mexico. So we're going to Mexico for 4th to the 28th.
Oh, good for you.
But we got a little freaking a little glitch. My wife's had a sore foot all week, and she's like, what's going on with her foot? So we went to the chiropractor. He goes, you got a broken foot. So she just went for an X-ray.
You gotta be kidding.
Yeah, so we'll see. So we're debating. So she's waiting for the X-ray results. And they said it's like very common, like ladies who wear high heels, like low in your foot kind of break. So anyway, so I was like to the chiro guy, I'm like, am I crazy for us to still consider going to Mexico? He goes, well, you can sit on the beach better than you can sit in a snowbank. So
I literally was about to say the same thing.
So I think we're gonna go anyway.
Oh, good for you. It reminds me of an old story of an old pipeliner. I remember he used to come into the office because he always worked for a contractor, and we're in an engineering shop planning a job, and packed up one day. It's like, Jim, it's like, where are you going, man? Is everything okay? And no, he said, I'm telling you, man, I grow this hair on company time. You can sure as shit know I'm getting it cut on company time as well, too.
That's a good one.
So for your wife, I definitely you should get your ass down.
Well, and she needs to slow down. She runs a home-based ladies consignment shop out of our basement, basically, and she's run off her feet like crazy. And everyone's in her, my daughters especially are like, Mom, you need to slow down. Like, you're working too many hours and all this stuff. So it'll be good. And then the kids are coming. 2 kids are coming down on the 12th to 28th, and then one daughter lives in Vancouver. Coming for a week as well, and I got one kid who's she's staying in Mexico, going to stay there for a month. She's a nurse, and then she's going to Australia for a year. So this will be a bit of a hurrah with they're all in their 20s, right? And then the youngest one, she just got back from Colombia. She's a model, but she's leaving in January for Istanbul. So we're gonna have an empty house anyway, but it'll be a good chance to get everyone together. So I
can't remember if we talked about this empty nest syndrome last. We must have talked about it.
Maybe a little, but because it's just happening now for me, right? So it's coming along. We'll see.
Wow, it's funny. So Marie and I talk about it a lot because it's when you're a young parent, you can envision this kid, and you can't even fathom it. But now we're at that situation. So we have 3 kids, and 2 of them are out of the home, and this past Thanksgiving, so was that a couple months ago, we all met in Coquitlam. Yeah. Because, Trek's on the island, so he kind of rode his bike there. Marie and Journey flew there. I drove down for Prince George just so we could all be together. And all we talked about was like, the number of times we can get together, we need to
Yeah.
grab that. So
Yeah.
I love that you guys are
Yeah.
doing that, because it's not easy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also just like I don't love, kids call me the Grinch. I don't love the Christmas time. I mean, just that there's like, it's supposed to be holidays. Like, it's like we work hard, right?
Yeah.
So when you get a little downtime, I want it to be downtime. I don't want to have to rush to everybody's house. Like, if I can just stay at home, like I'll cook all day and entertain and buy the drinks. I don't care. If I can just stay home and have people come to me, that's fine. But I hate the rushing around and all that drives me nuts.
More than a few times we've done the go away.
Yeah.
You know, Cuba and Mexico.
This is the second time for us, so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like, amazing.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about, like, the worst, last time we went was a couple of years ago, and I talked about we were going to go for like 6 weeks. Just because, I mean, most of what I do is just sitting in front of a computer talking on a phone. I can be anywhere. But then I just couldn't wrap my head around being gone for that long. So this time, that time was 21 days. This time is 24. So we'll see if I keep gradually moving it up, stay a little longer.
But people do it, like this remote working. I know it's not ideal. So for what you do, I'd say it's very important that you're an in-person guy. You're very personable. You are the face of Finley.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But come on, man, December 20th, I'm telling you, December 15th, out of office.
Yeah.
They already started.
Totally. Oh, yeah. 100%. So it'll be good. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So tell me more about the kids. How many kids do you guys have again?
I have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
I got a 27-year-old who's an artist living in Vancouver.
Okay.
I got a almost 23-year-old who's a licensed practical nurse at a dermatology clinic, and then I got a one just turned 20, who's working as an international model, and spent a little time working for an engineering company, just in the office, and so she's off on another engineering or another modeling gig.
Is that in Australia, or is that?
This one is, last year she was in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Okay.
Then she was in India for 3 months last winter.
3 months, eh?
Yeah, that was hard.
Holy
3
shit.
months last winter. She just got back from Medellin, Colombia, so the home of Pablo Escobar. So she doesn't get to go to any safe places so far. And then she's off to Istanbul in the new year sometime for a couple months. So
Man, good for her.
yeah, but home in time for lacrosse season is her only requirement.
Oh, okay, got
Because
it.
she's got one more year of junior lacrosse.
So do you have any kids at home? Just one?
Well, she's kind of at home. Like,
Okay.
she's home for a couple months and then gone, and then the 23-year-old is at home as well. But again, she's flying off in the new year to Australia. So
how are you and the missus doing with the no kids around?
so far so good. I mean, like, we have lots of our own interests as well, which is good. I think important. Like my parents, I took over running the company after my dad passed away, but he didn't he had interest, but my mom didn't have a lot of interest, so she struggled since then. But my wife has lots of hobbies and things. I play hockey 3 or 4 times a week. I coach lacrosse basically year round. So right now it's only once a week, but in the spring it gets to be a lot more than once a week. So it's good. And then we make sure we have our date nights and things like that. It works pretty well for us. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. I think, why would you ever want to stop that chaos?
yeah, exactly. And that's what people keep asking me too. Like, somebody, I posted something, I shared one of the podcasts that I was on before about the fight one.
Yeah.
And one of the guy who's a business coaching guy who I know, he goes, wait, I didn't know that you did that, like, on top of all, like, aside from coaching lacrosse, I also, like, I'm the director of coaching, so I have 25 coaches, head coaches, and another 50 assistant coaches underneath me. And they're like, so when do you sleep again? And I'm like, well, not that much, but I like being busy, so I like the chaos. I don't mind.
Oh, I think
I
it's
thrive
good.
on it. I think I do.
Well, I think to so many people I've talked to, especially old people, talk about the retirement. And I know that means different things to everyone,
Yeah.
but everyone I've talked to, it's a very much a financial statement more than anything.
A lot.
And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't like that. I've seen too many guys who've done very well professionally, and they seem like they get older, they lose that spark a little
You
bit.
got to keep it. Like, my wife and I've had that conversation too. Like, where I don't think I'll ever really fully retire. I'll find something that I want to do. Like, whether it's these coaching things or business type things. Keep dabbling in some business, and I like having a bit of a routine and a schedule, and as much as I can. And so I'll keep doing stuff. I think. We'll see. I mean, a lot of the physical stuff will depend on my health. Like right now I'm a 53-year-old goalie. And I'm going to keep playing. I have new equipment that I got a year or so ago, so I'm invested because it ain't cheap to be a goalie. So I'm going to keep playing I want to keep playing as long as I can.
Yeah.
So I saw a video one day of a guy who's at a goalie school, and you can't tell. He's making saves and stuff and makes these saves. And he looks a little rickety. But then at the end it says, this is Dave. Be awesome like Dave. Dave's 70, and he's a 70-year-old goalie still playing, right? So I'm like, I hope I can do that. So.
Oh man, I know a few goalies. Yeah, once they get to their 50s, the knees and the crouching down, it gets hard.
Well, and the good news is, like, I mean, like, I know a few guys in my era as well who are goalies, and the good news is when we played, we didn't butterfly every stop. You know, like that didn't start until I was probably in my 40s, right? So I had all those years of not doing that, not as hard on the body. So that's why these young kids are like, they're worn out, like their bodies are worn out. Plus they play too much.
Yeah,
so, like as young kids, they're playing year round and all that stuff. So
it's so funny. One of the things I think about you, and you know, you post lots about Finley, which is great, but you also are such an avid vocal supporter of sports, and that's so part of who you are as a person.
Yeah, there's a big connection around that. I mean, I grew up as I started playing sports like just for fun at a pretty young age, and I played hockey and lacrosse mostly at starting around 7 or 8, and did that, and then it kind of gradually, you find things that you get good at. Like I was actually a terrible hockey player as a player, and then around 10 I started playing goal, and back then they used to say, oh, you put the chubby kid in net, give that a try. And they always said the goalie needs to be the best skater, but in the old days it was like, well, who can't skate? Get in net. So I did. And as luck would have it, I'm not scared of the puck, and I was pretty good at it, and by 10 or by 12 years old or so I was showing some promise, and then I went a lot further than I probably should have, because I understood wasn't the best athlete, but I wasn't afraid of the puck. Very coachable. Like didn't matter how much you yelled at me, I just try harder.
And you're probably a nice kid.
Yeah, I was pretty nice, quiet kid too. Like goalies are always a little weird. I try not to be too weird, but yeah. Everyone's like, oh, who wants to play goal today? And everyone looks around the room, and all the kids nobody's doing that. So it was, you can be you're the hero of the zero when you're the goalie, but at the same time you need one. And that's what I tell all the old guys now, like in the men's leagues that I play in. I say, well, I don't guarantee I'm going to stop anything, but I guarantee I'll show up. Right. And that's half the battle, right? Yeah. So I got an email today, 2 emails today already looking for goalies to fill in, because it's a big business.
I know
this goalie thing. So
when did you make the connection between sports and leadership?
Well, that's interesting, because I think probably pretty young. Like I want to say, like the beginning connections were probably in my late teens, and I think where I started to understand that, like I always was kind of a lead by example person, so I was pretty shy and quiet for a lot of my life. Kind of like in my sort of late teens, early 20s, I kind of started to build some confidence. So that was the original probably start of it. Just kept making that connection. I had leadership roles more on my lacrosse teams as I was a player in lacrosse, whereas goalies, you can go out and do your job is kind of the best way to lead. You don't get to wear the C or be the captain when you're a hockey goalie. But I think I showed some leadership as a hockey goalie just by always working hard, and like I never dogged it in practice. So, some guys, the guys who wanted to get better loved practicing with me. The guys who wanted to screw the pooch didn't like practicing with me because I tried too hard. So, and some guys even say that now when I play at lunchtime hockey, like, why are you trying hard? I'm like, I'm here to get hit by pucks. I'm not here just to hang out with you. You guys are great, but it's not just about the personality. So that was the beginning part of it. And then probably later, I after university, I ended up working in a restaurant, managing a restaurant, and that's when I kind of started to see how the things I'd learned about leading a team, being part of a team, how that applied to leadership, and then kind of just kept on growing, and then in the last 10 years especially, I guess, and sort of into my 40s, I really started making those connections between sports and business, and it's a lot of the message that I send and the athletes that I talk to, our coach, now the older athletes, like the female lacrosse players I'm talking to, a lot of them in their early 20s, and I talk to them about, now they're playing sports and they love sports, but let's be honest, no one's making money off this. So, I try and see where we talk about life lessons through sport and how it's going to apply to their futures, whether it's their careers, their families, whatever it may be, going to school, all those different things. So,
like, how much of the leadership side is training, and how much is experience, and how much is like innate? Almost?
That's a good point. Like, I do feel like I feel there's certain things you can learn. You have to be open to it, but I also feel like there's a little bit of it's kind of in you. But now there's lots of different ways to lead too, and as we see the generation, something we're talking about in the oil industry, like some of the guys I'm talking to, the clients are saying, well, we're concerned about the timing of when. We talked about how there is going to be some more activity, like when the activity is going to pick up. We're concerned about the timing, is that some of the older guys are going to maybe have decided to hang them up and age out. And then how these younger guys are coming along. So we've got the generational differences and how we communicate. Like I think you and I are pretty good modern guys, and that we can still talk. We also have kids.
Same vintage though. Too.
Yeah, same vintage, but we know how to talk to, because we have met those guys that are maybe a little older than us, or even the same age of us, that just can't make the connection to how to communicate with the younger generations. Like they just can't wrap their head around it. And so, because leadership, a lot of it is about communication. So I think there's some of those things you can train. So anyway, in that sense, within the business world, that's something that I've been thinking about doing, is taking some of my guys, whether they're the younger ones or the older ones, because there is this gap sort of between our age and that 30 to year old. There's a lot less people in that window to do all the work, is spending some time showing them how to be leaders and showing them how to communicate with other generations. So I think there's a certain amount you can train. Some of it comes from, I think you got to have a certain amount of gray hair and experience for sure to have to, kind of been there, done that. You have to, I do my coaching videos that I do, the Game Changers one that I'm doing, and like one of the questions we always ask is, what's one of your biggest leadership fails? So I've been bringing athletes and such in on that one, and they all have leadership fails, because you learn more from losing than you do from winning.
For sure.
So they all just laugh, and they go, like, every one of them, like, sorry, no one wants to talk about their failures, but these are like pretty good athletes. They're like, oh no, like sports is all about failing. You make more screw ups, you make more bad passes than good ones probably, until you get to a certain level, right? So,
and that's where all the good stories come. And if you have a good self kind of deprecating humor, they usually you get a good laugh out of it too. I've had this conversation before in a different context. It wasn't leadership, but it was more mentoring.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me because, mentoring doesn't come naturally.
I agree.
To a lot of people, and I've witnessed that with my own eyes. And some people, I think they want to be. It's not in their personality. It just, and other people, Robin, it's so, they just do it by being.
Yeah.
Everyone's, if you're in their proximity, they're putting their arm around you. Hey, check this out. This is wild, and they'll show you stuff. And I met, there's a small group of people I've met over the years too, and they just have like zero interest in it, whether it's through keeping information or insecurity or whatever. But man, I'm so drawn to people who are that. Who want to teach, learn, grow, grab someone. And I can see you're that guy.
And I want to learn too, right? Like I'm always looking for other people that know something that I don't know too. I think that's a big thing. So I think you're right. It's a huge part of, some of it's in your personality. You have to have that willingness. And even during like the COVID times when things were really slow, I was like, I'd taken over running the family business, and then we lost a contract, and I was like, I'm not sure where the money's going to come from. And I started kind of polishing up my resume, trying to, go through the days. And I had signed up a friend of mine who does business coaching. He had invited me to this business summit. So I paid a few $100, went to this business summit, and it was all online. And one of the sessions was called Finding Your Why, or the Why Institute is what it was. I may have chatted with you about this last
Simon
time.
Sinek?
Yeah, it was based on Simon Sinek, but it was another company who'd kind of taken that. Okay. And you could do like a little survey, and that there's these different things like that would give you kind of guidance on it. And the one that I came up with after I did the survey was, they said that my why is contribute. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? So then they have a whole bunch of videos and extra stuff on that. And what it kind of basically means is that what my why is to help other people be successful. So I mean, obviously I want to have success myself. I've had some in sports, some in business, some in life, and all those things. Plenty of failures along the way, but I seem to get something out of helping other people. Not like money or pats on the back. It's just satisfying to me. Like helping someone else be successful is just rewarding for me. So.
What a gift, though, because that's something innate. That's inside of you. So I'd say you were, in some respects, probably blessed with that when you were born, and your parents probably gave you some gifts as well. But what a better way to go through life, being filled up by helping others.
Well, I don't know that I always recognized it either. Like it feels like more later, and then some of it is through your own experiences. Like I remember, like we've all done I have very limited pipeline field experience, but I remember going to work on a pipeline, and there's deep, scary looking ditch, and this guy's trying to tell me to get in the ditch, and I'm already a university educated kid at that time. I'm a 6'2", 240-pound fit hockey player at the time, and he's like, get in there, and I'm like, well, I don't know much about pipelines, but I know that that's not safe to go in there. So I kind of spoke up for myself and had some confidence. So kind of later in that part of my life, I had to develop a little bit of confidence, I guess, to have that. And then I feel like, well, wouldn't it have been nice if that guy was a little more mentoring to me and saying, hey son, see this ditch here? This is not the one you want want to go into. This guy was so focused on getting this job done and shortcutting and doing things dangerously that he didn't give me the chance to mentor. And then the same thing, like eventually I made a choice. I went back, did technical education at school, did some technical type work, like engineering work. And then I chose to go into the field of sales. And I'm pretty introverted naturally, so I learned how to ask questions and listen, which is always more beneficial as a salesperson, also beneficial as a coach, and also beneficial as somebody who's a contributor, because I don't know how to help you unless I know what your challenges are, and I do that by asking you and listening. So that part of it was, when I got into the sales side of things, again, well, here's your phone, here's your desk, off you go, good luck, giddy up. I was like, well, wouldn't it have been nice if somebody kind of just gave you a little guidance along the way? So I've spent a fair amount of time, like I do sales for the business still, but whenever there's a young guy who's thinking about going into sales, I'm like, yeah, I'll buy you coffee and I'll tell you all what I need to know and things like that. I mean, when I hire salespeople, I talk to them like, okay, first question I ask is, so sales is a profession. It's the highest paying job in the world, but you can't get a degree in it. And what did you do to make yourself a better salesperson? And everyone's like, well, I just got hired. And like, there's downtown Calgary is full of guys that have never been on a sales course before. Not that that's the magic formula, but you can certainly learn some things. So I'm like, first question I ask is, what sales books have you read? What courses have you been on? Well, my company didn't pay for any. Well, have you asked them to send you one? Because most of them will send you on one, right? So right now, my youngest daughter, who's 20, is right now, as we speak, sitting in a class. She's home from modeling, and I think she has what it takes to be a salesperson, and she's doing a sales course right now. So she's the only kid, she's 20, the only kid in the sales course. Everyone else are 40 and 30 and 45 and professionals, and she's learning the stuff, and ask her every day what she learned, and she's like, some of it's natural and some of it's not, but I think that mentorship goes a long way, like just helping people.
You're doing that for your own kids. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get that from my dad, so that was old school, figure it out yourself. There's a lot of things that I wish he had shared with me along the way, everything from, how to be not responsible with money, but how to manage your money, like how to invest a little bit, those types of things. I wish I had started that at a younger age, and then things that he never put me to work in the field. I mean, I was always kind of well suited to take over this business. Like I have 3 brothers. I have a chemical engineering diploma, which is process design. Like I couldn't now, but I could in the old days design a pipeline or a gas plant, and so I understood some of that. Maybe not the practical part of it, because I didn't spend as much time in the field as I wish, but I wish I had the chance to spend the time in the field, and my dad would never put me out to work in the field. You don't know anything, I can't put you. I'm going to just put me out there for free or for cheap and let me learn something. Maybe not even from you, but that was the way he grew up, right? So it was just figure it out yourself.
But again, was that like a generational thing or like his personality? Because you hear a lot of those older guys. They were definitely more rough and tumble, those boys coming up in the 40s.
Well, I don't think your dad's that far removed from the generation of my dad. Like my dad would have been 78, 79 kind of thing.
Yeah, he's Big Dave's 76 right now.
Yeah, so he's a little bit younger,
vintage,
but same kind of thing. So, I mean, you guys all end up working together. And I guess, if my dad hadn't passed, maybe we would have worked together. But I'd been making that conversation for 20 years. I've been talking to my dad about getting involved. And, the company was small, mom and pop operation. And we could have, maybe it would have grown differently. Maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. But I feel like there's some things I could have learned.
I would say even your age, your energy, your creativity, being outsider, like you could have taken it all. Like Finley's doing great, but you could have taken it in a different direction that your dad didn't have. Maybe either the skill set or the personality to really, because it's an older generation.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, and sometimes when you work at one place the whole time, like he started this company when he was 25 years old. And he passed when he was 20 or 73. So, I mean, we're now 53 years in business. We'll be 54 in March. And so he did work other places. He worked for Husky in Lloydminster a little bit there. And he went to school for a bit. But didn't have, he was his own boss by the time he was 25 or 26. So there's a lot of development that can come beyond that, especially for men. We kind of mature a little bit later maybe. So there's a lot to be learned between 25 and 35. So I bounced around a little bit, not necessarily by choice. Like I'd gone from technical work to sales work. And then, sales world, you move around. Like I ended up had one company. I left one company because the manager told me I was making too much money. I said, well, I'm pretty sure there's not such a thing. But so the day he told me that, my resume went out. So that was a 3-year stint to that company, and I left. And same thing happened. Something happened with one of the companies I worked for got bought by one of our biggest competitors, and I was the low man on the totem pole. So I got let go, not for performance, just for streamlining. So that was a little shorter window than I planned. So I had a little bit of bouncing around time. And then so by having that bouncing around time, sometimes you have to explain it on your resume, and I could always explain it given the opportunity. It wasn't like I got whacked from everywhere, but you got to see different companies. You get to there's learning what you like and what you don't like, or sometimes from people. I wish I had a few more mentors in my life, and I'm still kind of always searching, but I worked with a business coach for a period of time, and one of the jobs I had an executive who I thought was a really good opportunity to learn some things from, and I really wasn't. I felt like I wasn't learning anything, and then my coach kind of helped me understand that, well, you're learning what not to do. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's a very good perspective. Yeah. So like, whoa, I learned a whole bunch of what not to do, because I don't like being treated that way, so then I don't treat other people that way. So it's all in your perspective, I suppose.
Oh, for sure. But even, getting shuffled around from job to job probably wasn't nice at the time. But in hindsight now, you can look back and go, what a gift.
It was. And I got to, I did some different industries. I was in the, the G&G, like geology and geophysics kind of world for a while, selling services and products there. Wow, a very technology-based company, which is great. I worked on, one of the premier software companies in the world. That was my first sales job, and I'm really thankful for that one, because that was probably early. That was probably 2000, so that's coming up on 25 years ago. God, I'm getting old. But they had business processes, sales processes, in terms, and we had to use a CRM, customer relationship management database, and it would take, because this software was expensive, it could take a long time to sell it. But they're a public company and needed to report on the progress of their sales. So they report on the progress of their sales based on what you put into the database about, hey, we're at this stage of the sale, we're here, and that had to be accurate. And they used to say, well, listen, if you sold this software on Friday, and I can't go back and look in the database and see how you went through all the gates of selling it that we have documented for you, then don't expect a commission.
Holy shit!
That was
really?
like, yeah. So this was the incentive for making sure that you followed the process. Because everyone else now will tell you use your CRM, and you can get ground into the put into the ground with using these type of tools. There's a balance on how to use these tools, and now there's too much data. So the steps were simple. It was like making your calls, documenting it. It wasn't difficult. It was just building a process, because that's the people who are successful in the sales world are the ones who follow a process. So it was just making a repeatable process that you could do all the time. So that never happened where they didn't pay the commission. Everyone's like, oh, okay, so this is important, right? And that's how I learned. So I always thought that way coming in. I remember going into one of my energy services sales jobs, and the first thing I asked is, what's a CRM? And there wasn't one person in the company who knew what that stood for. Wow. This is a major company in still around, and they have no idea. And then they let a guy go. I want to say an old guy go in his 50s, but I'm in my 50s now, because I remember it felt like he was an old guy. And they let him go, and he said, "Okay, bye." And he turned around, he grabbed his Rolodex, and he walked out with his Rolodex.
No way.
And those were all the contacts, because they didn't have those contacts recorded anywhere. Now, we could have found them, but he also walked out with in his head what each one of those business cards meant in the last conversation he had. So there's just some value in that, processes and systems, I guess.
Oh, for sure. I think even when I've talked to other people, I talked to a guy not even that long ago, say a month or two back, and he said, I'm trying really hard at this, LinkedIn thing, and I'm posting every day and all this kind of stuff. I'm doing really good. I'm growing my brand. But he goes, I don't get any likes or comments or shares from the company. And he's like, what the hell? Like,
from his own company?
Yeah, the company he works for.
Oh.
And he's like, it gets a bit defeating at times.
Sure.
And I just said, what, just be encouraged. Because, at the moment, if something happens where you do switch the companies or anything happens, believe it or not, you're building your brand.
Totally.
You're building you. You're building your credibility, your authenticity. You get... Well, that stuff actually goes with you.
It does. It's your reputation, right? So I found that even so when I started doing these videos, and like I said, I am a little introverted, so a lot of times I'd go out and play hockey with the boys and lots of oil field guys, and sometimes I'd rush out of the rink, and a lot of it was because I took take being a dad real serious. So I had responsibilities at home too. And sometimes you're playing on prime time. And so I didn't stick around always for a beer. Now I have that freedom. I can do that a little more. But it was just kind of, then as I do stick around, I end up talking to guys, the guy beside me in the dressing room, we talk about business and what we do. And then he says, I saw your content on LinkedIn. Or he goes, I know some other guys who know you, and the words that they often use around me are like professional, integrity. And I was like, well, I didn't know that people thought about me that way. And I was like, that's good. And, some of the guys that I, have done business with too, like after they left companies and we have those conversations, he goes, yeah, like I listen to what you say on internet or on LinkedIn, your comments. I read every one and I follow everything, and you're popping up all over the place. And it is what it is, the social media world. But I was happy to hear how people perceive me for the most part, right? So that was good.
I think it's amazing because you don't come off as a sales guy. I know we're all in sales. Yeah. I get it, but you don't come off that way.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, you seem very authentic. So when you read a comment, you mean in what you're saying. That's why you do it.
Yeah, and that's how I was brought up to my dad. I mean, Dad probably could have been a little more salesy. I mean, one of the things that we used to learn is, I've worked at companies where, you're rocking the expense account, and that's a big part of the job. And I never had those clients usually. I typically got forwarded towards the guys that were procurement laden. I do have an engineering background, so I have a high attention to detail. And I also have a political science degree, so I have pretty good reading comprehension. So I'm more likely to read all the lines in that proposal and then put a good proposal together that aligns with everything. So I often would get those clients, but those are the clients that you can't take to the hockey game because they're not allowed to. The Imperial Oils and those kind of guys in the past, and those were the ones that I often ended up with. And then my dad was always, he didn't, I remember him being young and he'd be going downtown, or me being young and he'd be going downtown to take guys for lunch. And he always said, well, no, lunch is not for buying business, it's for thanking them for business. That's how his approach was. Now I think there's a balance on that. Mm-hmm. Right, and maybe that's something different. Maybe nowadays, maybe it's a hockey game and dinner is thanking you for business, and lunch you can still do business. But that was more of his approach. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna spend piles of money and things like that. Especially it's expensive to do all those things these days. But there's there's a balance, and you have to pick your spots and stuff as well.
It'd be neat to talk to your dad because even about mentoring, because how early he got going with Finley, what mentors did he have? And you'd be curious to ask him that question.
Yeah, I know he had a few. I mean, there's some of the guys that are still around, that guys were business guys, and there's things that I think he maybe, I think he wished maybe he kind of pushed a little more at times, maybe took on some change. He's pretty risk adverse, and I definitely am too. Mm-hmm. So I've got a younger brother, my youngest brother, who is straight up right out of the textbook entrepreneur guy, shoot first, ask questions later, and totally comfortable with, hey, you hit some home runs and then you strike out a few times, and he hasn't struck out much, that's for sure. But I have a lot of respect for those type of guys, and there can be a mesh between them, but you also need the guy who checks the boxes and asks questions about, what's the budget for that and things like that. And I'm a little more of that guy, but my dad, I think probably business could have been bigger and different if he was a little more willing to. Even at one point in time, we were dealing with one of our clients, and they had asked, they said they had we want to bring on an environmental guy. And my dad's like, well, we don't do that. We do pipeline and facilities. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's lots of stuff underneath that. Yeah. Pipeline and facilities. He goes, no, we have the guy. And my dad's like, well, we do pipeline and facilities. I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, can we mark that up? Because that's our business. That's how we do business people. And they go, well, yeah, you can mark it up. I'm like, well, now we do environmental. Right, and they were bringing the guy. They just wanted to run him through us, which is pretty like a name hired guy. So pretty great scenario, honestly, and that expanded. And then even recent work, like working on the Trans Mountain project, that happened a lot with us. Because I think my youngest brother, he never said no. He would never say no, ever, and he still doesn't. He answers the phone, and he just answers it whenever. And I think this thing has an off button, but he never uses the off button, right? So he always just says yes. We'll find a way to make it work, and you have to judge that. But so Trans Mountain, we ended up putting, I found a blasting inspector. Guaranteed Finley Inspection Services never had a blasting inspector before. And Trans Mountain asked us, said, we can't find anybody. I said, I don't have anybody now, but I'll look. So I hit up my network and end up finding some guys that fit the bill. HDD, a bunch of different things that we hadn't ever done before. So it was just by saying yes and trying.
Gosh, I would have loved for you to have maybe worked a bit closer with your dad for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Just because he built something special, and for him to see that another iteration and just you take it.
Yeah.
And
I think he would have been okay with the growth part, like that kind of thing, like that kind of attitude, but also the He saw the transition from, hey, what's your price? Like, that's it, one page, not even one page, probably like, hey, I'll just tell you what my rate is and we'll shake hands. Like, I'm sure your dad's done plenty of those deals in his life. But going from those kind of transactions to the thick, safety manuals and all that stuff used to drive him crazy, like your ISN net worlds. And why am I paying for that again? Because there's not one time where we show up on location with a Finley safety manual where they're going to say, that's what we're going to follow. No, they're not. We're a representative of the client. So they're going to follow the manual of the client. That's what our job is there to do, is to uphold that. But it's, now it's table stakes. You have to have those things. And those things frustrated him sort of late in his life there. But if I was there to take care of those, I think he'd be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And then the other things, like the sort of other potential, he was really good with relationships. As he got older, and he passed away from cancer, he got a little more ornery as he got older, but a little more direct in his communication. He was always pretty direct, but sometimes you have to do that a little bit. There's a little bit, sometimes too much butt kissing as you go through some of those meetings with the clients. Like, you have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, especially when you're in an environment like we are right now, where it is slow, and we're basically, you don't want to say it's all about the money, because that sounds so cynical, but man, I gotta tell you, Rob, that's what it feels like some days.
Well, my dad's one of his favorite sayings was, "We need the money, not the experience." Mm-hmm. Basically saying we're not going to work for free or work for cheap either. You get what you pay for in our space. Quality matters. That's why you're there. So that's one of the concerns for me, especially in this time right now, is as things are slow, people are going to be a little desperate, and I hope companies don't try and prey on that and drive the rates down. People still need, there can be a win-win scenario where someone offers you fair services and products, and they have to make money. Like the inspectors who are contractors, they got to put money or food on the table for their families. The guys like me who, we're the middleman who do those type of work, we need to run our business and provide for our families, and the companies obviously need to be responsible too with their funds. There is a balance, because there are clients out there who will run people and drive people into the ground, and I'm a big believer in karma, and that will catch up to them someday, because the $100 a day you saved on cheaping out on an inspector will come bite you in the butt when that line explodes or leaks or whatever. Like, that's a whole lot more expensive. It's the same concept in the safety, right? Like, when you cut corners in safety, that ends up being an injury. To have one injury or a fatality, those things, like, that's impacts are massive financially and people wise too.
Well, I hope a lot more people adopt that attitude and culture, because I've sat down at the table so many times with different people and clients, and I'm going to gag if I hear the word collaboration one more time, because we're all collaborative and we're all best friends when you're first getting going. Mm-hmm. And then once you kind of get into the weeds and the collaboration, people kind of forget about that a little bit, and you go into my side and your side, and I'd like to way to bridge those gaps some days. Yeah. I don't know how to do it.
It's hard to do, and I think it is hard. It's finding the right clients. When things are slow, you need to be. You can't be as choosy on who you work for. Mm-hmm. When things are busier, you can be a little choosier who you work for maybe, and find the companies that are collaborative. We worked for a long time, Finley, for 30 plus years with a client who was very collaborative, known for hiring the smartest of the smart engineers who were super, like, great textbook engineers, but they would come in, but they young, wet behind the ears, didn't know what they didn't know, and then the value that our guys brought is we had all the practical experience. So they would pair them up. And these kids would learn a ton. Like, they're super smart, the whizziest, best, fanciest models and spreadsheets and things like that. So our guys probably learned some tech from them as well. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of value, and it felt like a real collaborative environment. Now, that's not always the case, mm-hmm. and it's your best case scenario when you can choose who your clients are going to be, mm-hmm. but you can't always do that. So it's a fine balance, that's for sure.
No, I'd like to get back to that. I do have a friend of mine, and he's same thing, mid-50s, and he's looking at slowly exiting the industry, because at some point that the handshake and look the guy in the eyes, and he said, yeah, it's just those days seem to be disappearing, and even the salespeople are getting younger, and it's just a race to the bottom of price. He says it's at some point it's defeating. Yeah, just the way the industry is turning on itself.
Yeah, it's really. There's certain companies out there that they do it more than others. They do it especially. I find there's some of the ones that I've heard who are hard to work for and who I suspect are hard to work for, and through some of my experience believe are hard to work for. But then they have heard the people say that depends on the service, depends on what you're doing. So if you're one of the classics, I have a friend who is in the rental business and centrifuges, so high wear items, things like that. And his company finally just said, we can't run these at this price that are competitive. There's a lot of maintenance on these things. You keep running them in the ground like they're never going to get repaired. They're never going to, and then we're going to lose money. But there's still in this industry, and I think my dad, as one of those oil field cowboys, right, didn't know what he didn't know. Now, he had piles and piles. Everything was in a notebook. So we had all those notebooks where you write the rates and write the margins and all those things down. I could flip through and see, and he knew what he was shooting for. But he wasn't factoring in some of the other costs. Like he probably was factoring in like his rent and his things like that. But it's a mom and pop operation, so
but not depreciation of equipment.
No, and we didn't have equipment. But there's a lot of guys out there who haven't factored that in. Like guys who are just make it happen kind of guys. And if they don't get the right sort of help along the way to the right bean counter to help them with some of those things, and they think they're making money, but they're not. Like I can't believe how many people I worked at the really big company in senior management positions that had no concept of what they were actually making. They said, well, we're making this amount. I'm like, yeah, but you got like 500 people in the back office and you're paying rent on this and this. Like all that comes off. Didn't know the difference between fixed and variable costs. And I was lucky that we talked about mentorship. I mean, at one of those companies, I ended up getting some great mentorship. He was a guy from in the sales industry, sales side of things, and I was with the company. I left because I got glossed over for a position that I was clearly qualified for. I was very vocal about leaving. I told everybody when I didn't get the job. I was okay with not getting the job. What I was okay with was not getting a chance to go to base or go to the home plate and swing. I'm like, I'm okay. Striking out. I'm not okay sitting on the bench. So they didn't even interview me. Guy within the company, and so as soon as this other guy got hired from outside the company, I said, I went around telling everybody, I said, I'm going to be gone. I'll be gone 2 to 3 weeks. I'm looking for a job somewhere else. Like everybody, it was kind of probably not the smartest thing to do. But then I left, went somewhere else, got a little bit of interesting experience somewhere else. And then this guy who was a manager in a different division of the company came back to me and said, and an older guy, so he's like, okay, listen, he calls me and he goes, going to meet you at the petroleum club in one of those back rooms and go in through the side door. I'm like, what are we doing here? Are we like robbing banks or what are we up to? And he's like, no, I just don't want anyone seeing me talking to you like in public. And I'm like, okay. And and we sat down with him. He goes, I think you're the one that got away. I said, okay. He goes, I already talked to the president and he doesn't disagree. We would like to take you back. Not take you back, have you back. And then when I came back, probably, I think it was 9-10 months later, 2 levels higher than I left.
Amazing.
Different division, so not as much volume, lower profile. But then he sunk in and spent some time with me. I mean, he was old school in the sense that he was like, well, you're in here at 6:30, you're staying here till 6. And I'm like, okay, I got no problem grinding it out. I know I'm an athlete. I've been at practice at 6 and then practice again at 6 at night too. So I get that, no problem. And you wear a suit and tie every day. I'm like, I don't mind that. I'm okay with that. And then so those were some of his expectations around that. And then, some of the things, I use this all the time when I have some coaching clients and I talk to them about if somebody else depends on you to do your job, it's your obligation to do their job. It's your obligation to make sure you do your part in that. And his example was we had, our accounts payable clerks. So they come and they drop off all the invoices and stuff that to be paid. And I had to approve them all. He goes, do not let those sit on your desk for more than 24 hours. Because, the women would come by and check to see what they were done. And I'd see other colleagues when they're piling up. And I tried to turn mine around. They'd come and if there was a small pile, I'm like, do you have time? And she's, well, I'll wait. I said, I'll do them right now. And they were really appreciative of that. So I always got a little extra good treatment because I helped them do their job. They can't do anything. They can't pay those bills until I sign off on them. So that was one little piece of mentoring with him. And then he spent a lot of time learning the business side of things. So I'm a semi-smart kind of guy. But he sat down and we did it with a company, probably a little old school, gigantic spreadsheets like this, like printed out on paper. And we went through every line of every expense. And the company was tracking probably more than they needed to. How much did we spend on photocopier fluid? Like literally, I'm like, really? We're tracking that? And how about we just call that admin costs or something? But he went through every line. He goes, no, you need to know this because your boss is a big deal. And the big boss is a big deal. That's Marie Edwards. And he's going to ask them those questions sometimes. You may or may not, but at least you know you can answer them. So anyway, I got that level of coaching or mentorship, and I've carried that on too. So you asked earlier about mentors. I have had that was one for sure in my life. So.
But what a gift again! Like if you didn't have either the courage or even the, I don't know, you're set up to walk away from a job, like because a lot of people don't have that courage.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, this isn't right because my boss either passed me over or is a bully or I'm underpaid or undervalued or whatever. A lot of people don't do that because they don't have the courage or maybe financially just can't.
Well, it was risky. I mean, I didn't quit, so I just said I'm going to look, and then I did. So it wasn't all good in that, as I did get hired by somebody else right away within the same industry, and kind of right in prime time, like in the winter. This guy hired me, and I came in, and like most people understand in the sales world, it generally takes 6 to 12 months, sometimes more, to kind of really get your feet under you. And it's really rare that when somebody leaves that they can bring all their clients with them. And if they do that, you're probably bringing the wrong kind of clients, because when I talk to new people about trying to sell our services, and they say, well, we're using somebody, I'm like, well, I don't want to ever get rewarded for doing a good job by getting replaced by somebody else. Like, I don't think that's fair. Like, so I just say, listen, I don't want to, I'm not going to, if they're doing a good job for you, great. But if there's something they can't provide, they're not doing a good job, or you just want to try something different, then I'm here. That's kind of been my approach. Like, it's not the super aggressive sales type. And some people will say, well, you need to be aggressive and jam your way in. I'm like, but this is, again, about working with the right people. So if somebody's going to bump me out just because of that, or the price, then that's not great either. So when you go to work somewhere else and they say, well, who can you bring with you as clients? And I had guys ask me that. I'm like, well, I have some contacts. I can't guarantee they're going to switch this multi-million-dollar service overnight to me, but we can work on it. But we have to bring something to the table. We have to offer, good service, good value, all those things. Anyway, I went to this company who thought I should be able to bring a whole bunch of sales with me over Christmas, basically, in short order. Ended up getting let go because he didn't have the money to pay me. So
gotcha.
He was a cockroach, and thankfully he left the country and is working somewhere in another industry. And then luckily it was a headhunter who placed me there, and she felt terrible, and she found me another job real quick that was in the construction. Actually, I joined Flint Energy at that time, so I went to work there for a short period of time. But it was it was pretty stressful. I mean, I had mouths to feed at home and stuff like that. I mean, luckily I was never really out of work, but it would have been hard to make that move and not have somewhere to go. But I just kicked up the job search, and that worked out okay. So,
like in your career, as you bounced around, because you've not stayed at the same companies, you've switched industries in some of the ways. We talk about the strength of your character and sincerity and authenticity. I feel like you've been able to carry that with you as you go, and I think people can pick up on it as well.
I think the right people do. I mean, one of the comments I've had, some people, my wife says, you must be really hard to work for. I said, well, I don't know. Like, I've had some really good feedback from people, and I think generally speaking, the ones that find me hard to work for are, they're the dog fuckers. They're the ones that, like, I'm really clear about what I expect. I'm also really understanding. So I use it with athletes. I'm like, these are the things I expect of you. If there's reason why you can't meet these expectations, you just come and tell me. And if it's reasonable, we'll talk about it. We'll come up with a plan to do it. And that's how I did it in business as well. So I tried to be, reasonable but firm. Like, if you don't lay out expectations for people, then they just kind of flounder along, never really knowing what's expected. And even in one of the jobs, I changed roles, and I got a new team, and I kind of had to do, which is always hard when you come in and you didn't pick the team. So I did kind of an assessment on some of the team members, and a couple of them ended up not working out. And one of them it was pretty clear. Like, he and I felt bad for him. He never got any guidance. He kind of got brought in, an ex-athlete, and said just, here's your credit card, here's where the suite of the box is, and never really shown a lot of what to do. Probably had really high potential because he was a high-level athlete, but never got mentored the right way. Anyway, had a hard time doing some of the basics of, like, expense accounts and things like that. So worked with him for as long as I could, and at some point it was time to make a decision. And it was hard to let somebody go, but he said, you know what, I kind of knew from the get-go that I wasn't going to be able to meet your expectations, and this wasn't going to be a fit, and shook my hand and professionally and left. And he went on. He's doing his own thing now and has his own business, which is maybe a better fit for him. So I had a few of those along the way. So it was some honesty and integrity sometimes it's just business, but business is personal too. Right?
Oh, I think so. I know I talk lots about. I take pipeline very seriously. Like I'm pretty easy to get along with guy, and I like to laugh and joke. But like I hope that shines through how serious I take this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're you know, nice, good personality, fun to enjoy. But at the end of the day, your name is tied to this project that you're on, and it has to be done right, and people need to go home safe, and they need to there's always challenges along the way. It's not what happens to you; it's how you react to it.
Oh, for sure. And I'm the same as a lot of people. Like I think we all hold ourselves to a certain standard, and if that standard you hold yourself to is pretty high, it can be hard for other people in your proximity that maybe don't hold themselves to the same standard, and it can create some waves, unfortunately, not in a positive way.
Well, you need to align with as many people who have similar values to you. That's one thing. I mean, not everybody is a high performer, but you also need worker bees too, right? Like that's everybody has their role, and you know that's again back to the sports, the teams thing. You know, I always say there's only one Sidney, you know, and you can't have a whole team of Sidney Crosbys. There's only one puck, right? So somebody's got to dig it out of the corner, somebody's got to pass it, somebody's got to do it, somebody's got to defend, somebody's got to stop it. There's all those different things, and it's the same on any kind of like a job site or your family or whatever it is. You just got to make sure everything gets covered, and a lot of it's about putting the right people in the right places too. So I mean, I've had some chances to do that where I, you know, maybe somebody was a field guy who had some, you know, I liked putting field guys, operations people through sales training, not to become salesmen, but who talks to the client probably more than the salesman does.
For sure.
The field guy does, right? So make sure he just represents well, and a lot of the guys that are open to it just blossomed and flourished by learning them. They said, I didn't know that. What if I did that? And then all of a sudden you find the guys who identify themselves just through osmosis as high potentials that maybe they should move into management type roles. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too. I mean, I know you've spent time in the field. Not everybody who's a good operations guy should be the next manager, should be the vice president. You know, there's some that happens to, like bottom to the top, and that's when that happens, it's one of the best things ever because you know everything. But the companies who promote guys from in those roles, just you're a great rig manager, you should be the you should be the sales manager now, or like that's just doesn't always work. They're different skill sets. Like you have to show the skill set.
For sure. Like I've seen some guys. So we're lucky enough to always know. So when you plan a job, you out with the assistant superintendent or the superintendent, and you go and you pull it together. What I found is the guys who know these jobs better than anyone is the foreman.
Yes,
because they live and breathe their discipline, whether it's ditch or lowering or bending. They know. They don't know this stuff. They know that.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed having those guys do the planning with us because they just are so good.
Think of things that.
Oh yeah,
they're in the trenches, literally.
You give them a pencil. Like, well, if I would do this, how I would do it. I was like, oh, well, then that's what we should put in the price. If that's how you do it, that's what's going in the price. You know, and I love that stuff. Because you've seen it,
been there, done that, right? So, and then I mean, some of those guys, when you get the chance now, you can also go, okay, well, that's great that you did all this, but let's look at how these affect costs, or like you know, the big picture of the business, or those kind of things. That there's lots of ways to look at that. Because I mean, some of these things they're not like the math part of the business part. It's adding and subtracting and dividing and multiplying. It's not calculus. It's not engineering math. But so some of these guys are bright, and I used to try and do that with salespeople. Whatever I could within my companies, I always wanted to have a tool that would allow me to calculate margins. I wanted my salesmen to sell based on margin. So I had a few places where incentive programs were ridiculous. They were based on utilization, for example. So utilization, so you can put a lot of equipment to work for really cheap. So if I put a whole bunch of equipment to work for really cheap, is that better than putting a little bit of equipment to work for? And some of that's about market, how you look in the market. Well, this company's got a lot of stuff working. But if guys I would like to show them the margins. Here's the range you can work in the margin. Just remember that when you come in on the minimum margin or the bottom margin, when it comes to budget time next year, it's going to be a harder conversation for me to tell my boss that I want to give you a raise because all your jobs sold on the minimum margin. So if all your jobs are selling at the high margin, this is an easier conversation. I can say, look how well we did. Look how we have money to spend on things that matter. Not that it all doesn't matter, but help you put some cash in your jeans. So try to explain the why and sort of my approach, and that's a little bit of we talked about mentoring. I think vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable. You know, like we're big tough men in our 50s and we can't be vulnerable. I'm like, that's bullshit. That's just lack of security. That's insecurity, right? So I've found that that's gone a long way. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to go sit at everyone's desk and cry every day, and but ask about families and be a little bit vulnerable and share some of this information, because if you're worried about that guy using that information to take your job, that means you're probably not doing that good a job. So like if you're potentially going to get preyed on by the next guy, the next whippersnapper coming up. And then my approach was always, well, that's okay, because I plan on moving up anyway, so I'm going to leave this chair open soon, so do you want it? Because this is what you're going to take to get it. So that was one of my best leadership success stories, was having one of those where I got an opportunity to move up, and I had two next guys, so they both bumped up and I bumped up, and they've gone off to do, one of them's gone off to do incredible things. He's a CEO of a company now, because it was a guy who started in the field, like high school diploma, started in the field, now is a CEO of a company in the energy industry, and lots of great skill sets. He had one of the same mentors as me. I like to think I gave him some mentorship, and then he had a lot of his own drive and stuff as well. But like, those are important things.
For sure. But even mentoring and being vulnerable, like, I think some people try to fake that. You can't fake it, Robin.
No.
Like, when you ask someone how their family is, or, hey, are you doing okay? Like, I think people know you well enough now to know, oh yeah, he's asking because he actually cares.
Well, and I think a lot of it's the follow-up too. Like, so that some of that is like the first time you asked him, like, I've seen this act before from somebody else. They didn't really give a shit. But then, you go back later, quick little text. Hey, remember that call we had? Just, I wanted to check, see how you're going, how you're doing, and those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, you have to be genuine too. And sometimes you can tell in how people interact with them. I think I can. Like my dad, I like to think it's one of my gifts, drives my family nuts, is that when I meet somebody fairly quickly, they say it's judging. I don't think it's judging. I say it's no, because I'm naturally, like I said, naturally introverted. So I'm an observer. So I observe everything from how people walk in, how they carry themselves, how they talk to other people. I mean, one of the classic ones was, if you weren't going to hire a new sales guy, take him out to a restaurant and see how he treats the service staff. Or your spouse, same thing, right? I tell that to my daughters, go to a restaurant with a guy and see how he treats the service staff. Those are good examples. So I use that kind of observation mechanism. But I remember my dad, and he wasn't as articulate about how he explained it, but he met with a guy one time and he was trying to sell him an investment, and I think one of my brothers was there along with him, and he goes, well, you know what, I looked into his eyes. If he was a horse, I wouldn't buy him. He had crazy eyes. So that was my dad's example of way of explaining. I was like, okay. So I think that's an important thing that, for me, I try to make sure that people can see the real me as quick as they can. And I wasn't always that way. That came over time.
Oh, no, for sure, for all of us. It makes me laugh, because every now and again, I've seen them in bookstores where you can, how to improve your emotional intelligence quotient, all this kind of, I'm like, is that a teachable thing? Because to me, it's like, either you have it or you don't, I think. And I could be talking out of my ass right now, but like, I think if you can feel someone, you can or you can't. Yeah. Some people don't even have that skill set.
Agreed. Well, there's a reason why you and I connected very quickly too. Like, I met you, I can't remember how we first got connected together. It might have been through probably through Nick Gemmell, since he connects everybody. Right? So you and I met through Nick and went for a coffee, and I was like, I remember having the coffee with you, meeting at the DeVille's on 4th there, and just really enthusiastic about, you came in and shook my hand, and we had a talk, and you can tell how people carry themselves, how you lean in and you look and you make contact. And I remember right after the call, right after we met, I remember texting my wife saying, I just had the best coffee meeting ever. Like, just met this great guy who seems to care about people in the industry. So yeah, I think it's good that we've kept in contact, and you can tell usually pretty quickly, So like I said, my wife and kids drives me nuts, because I'll tell them like a potential boyfriend or somebody else in the family will come through the door, and I'm like, I don't know, that guy's probably not going to make it. I'm happy to be wrong, but I don't want to be right all the time. And like, Dad, and then later on, sure enough, they'll say, you were right, and I'm like, yeah, but they got to figure out themselves, and they're learning those skills too. I think you can learn some of it.
Yeah, just from a book. I just am not.
Not from a book. I don't know. I mean, I never read one of them, but it's pretty hard. Yeah. That's where you need a mentor, a coach, maybe someone to do a practical. I'm not sure, but yeah, I haven't read any of those books yet. So,
but I've met a few people in my life. Let's just say there's a handful of them in my whole life, and you spend some time around them, and you can almost like, oh yeah, you and I, same cloth,
Totally.
pick your metaphor.
Yeah.
We're same vibe, same. You
Totally.
meet those people, and it's just you can feel it right away almost.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I often worried about for me was like I was always, and then it doesn't happen as much now because of the way people dress downtown. But I was always kind of everyone looked at me as like a suit. So I was like I have a degree, right? So I have a political science degree, and really, political science for the longest time. I was like, okay, well, it fit in really nice to my hockey schedule. Basically, was why it ended up that way. I should have probably taken engineering. That's what I was kind of good at, the science and math side. And later on, I went back and did that engineering education. And then I was like, I was pretty serious, pretty quiet, and I always kind of wondered how I came off to people. And some people kind of found me not because I was just quiet, so a little less approachable, right? So I kind of I grew into that, having some confidence. Part of it was at one point when I finished that political science degree, and let's just say there aren't a stack of jobs available in that career, in that field. I ended up working in restaurants. I worked in some restaurants, as a server and then as a manager of restaurants. And that was my first crack at managing a team. So try managing a team, in a restaurant where these, it's lots of transient people coming and going, job wise. People quit for all kinds of reasons. And then some people say this is why you're good at coaching female athletes, because one of the restaurants I worked at was a lot of waitresses, right? So I managed sort of the excuse my words wisely, the challenges of working with a bunch of young females in a group. So the dynamics of that. So it's carried over into business as well, into coaching, and then sometimes in business too.
Well, you get a bit of flexibility because you have 3 daughters. So
Yes, yeah. I mean, who knew, right? I mean, I'm the oldest of 3 boys. All pretty, all athlete kind of guys, and my dad was pretty rough and tumble guy, and he used to say too, he goes, I don't know how you do it having those 3 daughters. He says, all the crying. Can't they just go downstairs and wrestle? Sort that out. I'm like, well, yeah, there's always something to cry about because there's, they're all spread out enough age-wise, whether it's hormones or different stages of life. And yeah, I mean, they're all kind of in their, the youngest one just got into her 20s now. And yeah, I love my daughters. They're great. I wouldn't have changed a thing. So I think maybe I would have been, they said, Dad, you would have been too hard on a boy. So, because they said sometimes they think I'm harder than them, but then I also get nice cards and stuff at my birthday and Christmas and things like that, telling me that they're grateful for that. Cool. So it doesn't always seem that way.
You said something that caught my attention was, you always wonder, especially younger people, how you're perceived by others.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked about this with a group of friends there some years ago, and we're convinced like nobody ever actually knows how they're perceived by others. You get some ideas, yes, get some clues, but we're so set up in society to be polite and kind, and
especially Canadians.
For sure. And if you're around people you know and love, last thing you want to do is hurt their feelings and be honest, even though it would help.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced, even now, like, do we ever know how we're perceived by others? I just don't think so.
It's hard to say. I feel like maybe in recent years, like part of it's this little social media thing that I've gone on. I don't do Instagram or Facebook. I do my LinkedIn things, and I'm trying to do, I do my professional posts that are corporate-y and things like that, and they get some good reaction. But then when I started putting a little more personal things out there, that's when I really got it. So I think that showing that that other side of you, or people knowing what else you do besides just being an oil and gas guy, I think that's kind of helped. So I feel like I agree with you, but at the same, I feel like I'm feeling a little more comfortable with how people perceive me, and I hate to think that it was the social media part of it. Maybe because I've revealed more of myself to other people, like people who know me, who I sit and do this with. They know what I do in my life because these are parts of our conversation. They know that I'm a hands-on dad and I'm involved in sports and several sports and the things that I value, because I'm pretty clear. I think it comes through in my conversation. And sometimes it's purely direct. Like I'll tell you what what I value. But then I think putting a little bit of that stuff online, people are seeing it, and then some people who maybe didn't know me as well now, they'll see me at the hockey rink or see how I interact with somebody, and they go, well, that actually matches up pretty good. This guy is who he says he is. So I think I'm getting a little sense for what some people think of me. And not that I don't want to say I don't care, because I do. I care how I show up. I'm working with an executive coaching client who I'm coaching right now, and one of the questions I put to him is, how do you show up? Or how do you want to show up for your wife, your kids, your family, your business partner, your clients, things like that? And he's like, first response was, well, I feel some anxiety over that question. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's not what's meant to happen. But he's like, well, I just want to when I say how I want to show up for all these people and how I want to be seen, that puts some pressure on myself because I want to be seen like in this light, where it's, it's easy to kind of skip some of the steps to show up the way that I know how I want to do it. But now it's caused him anxiety in thinking that he now knows what he has to do to show up for how he wants to be seen. So,
but I've always thought, like, for me, the true reflection of a person is more, how are you behind closed doors when no one's watching, all this kind of stuff. And again, I don't know you that well, but I'm pretty confident you're probably a very similar guy at work, in sports, at home, as a dad, all these things, and I like that because to me that's authentically you, or as close as you can get.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So like it could be any simple things, and you see it. The more I see it, like I hate saying that sometimes because I believe it, but I sometimes like that's what if somebody's kind of cutting corners here. I don't want to think that they're going to cut that corner somewhere else. But in my experience, from what I've viewed, that's often the case. I mean, again, I'm happy to be wrong anytime, but it's like if you're kind of cutting corners on something else, you're probably going to cut them somewhere else as well. And my dad always, one of the words that always came out of his mouth was integrity, and that's one of the words I always use with our company. And to me, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, right? So what you just said. So I try to be the same when no one's watching, and that's something I'm pretty aware of. Like you can call me names and things like that, but my character is what matters to me, because it's what I'm kind of promoting with our company is our reputation. You've been very supportive in saying that, because you guys have done it as well. You can't build reputation overnight, but you can ruin it overnight.
Oh, for sure.
And you can only maintain it for all that long period of time by doing it right almost all the time, right? So there's a lot of pressure that applies to that, but sort of when it's ingrained in you, it becomes easier.
Yeah. How do you find reflecting on yourself as a person? Because we've talked about this recently. Sweet Marie and I were talking about someone in particular, a funny event, and we're like, it's almost like they can't never look inward on themselves, how they play a part in the situation. And again, maybe it goes back to the character and who you are as a person, but I'm convinced, even as a 50-something-year-old guy, the person we're talking about, he's never looked at himself inwardly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who still don't do that. That takes like I think a lot of self-awareness, takes the right type of person, I guess. I mean, sometimes you have to, be honest with yourself and willing to, like I always say, and I think there's people who truly can't do it. Like I think based on personality, understanding of personality and psychology and things like that, there's some that just whatever is in their mind, or, what everyone's, we're all a product of, I don't want to use the word traumas, but whatever experiences you've had through your life is who you are. There's the nature versus nurture. You start off with a certain amount, and then sort of what you experience is how you get shaped, and then how you react to what you experience as well. So I think there are some people that, like I know that there's people I've met that I know when they look in the mirror, they see themselves in there, and they think what they're doing is the right thing. And I was like, I don't know how that's possible, but I think that's honestly it, because you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't behave that way.
I'd say we probably all have those certain blind spots in our own lives, for sure.
Oh, yeah. But I love being right.
Oh, so. My God. I need a lot of attention. I had to make my own podcast to get enough attention. But
yeah, right.
I know with, again, getting back to this conversation we had earlier, and I attributed more insecurity at some point at his age. And I'm like, then it really shifted my perspective, because like, oh, okay, so I'm a guy, maybe he's not a dickhead, maybe it's actually sad, because I would be gutted to get to that stage of my life and be that uncomfortable in my own skin. And that's it. It was a good shift for me.
That's, when you see that in somebody else, then it can be a little wake up call, right? Too. So some people have said, well, some people have said, well, you have lots of success, and I'm like, well, it depends what success is too, right? So, I'm also, one of the things I'm hard on myself, I have a bit of a fear of failure. And so I think it has held me back. I know it's held me back because I try to, because I'm an analytical, analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis kind of type person. So sometimes I have to really think about that and like, okay, just do it. Some of these things, like even this business coaching thing I've done, I've had a few people, from my wife to my kids to business colleagues, just saying, okay, so when are you going to do that again? And what's stopping you? I'm like, wow, I don't want to screw up with my video. I'm like they're going to forget about that video next week. Do another one. Like, just start. So that's only happened in probably the last 5 years with me. Just being willing to just start something. So that's been a good revelation for me. Then again, it took some people in my life, and some of them are really significant people, like my wife and my kids, and some of them are like a little more distant work colleagues who said, just kind of giving me a poke and said, this is how you come off to people, and some people want to hear what you have to say. So I was, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And if nobody listens, nobody listens. Oh well. Yeah. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Nobody's listening. We're doing that right now.
Somebody will.
Yeah.
Somebody will. No. So that's I think that self-reflection is really important, and you can overdo it. I think, and you can also be it can grind you into the ground if you get hung up on things. But you got to win some and lose some, and make the small improvements. One of the things I've been referring to a lot. I don't read a ton of books. I read lots of content, but one of them that I read that really stuck with me was a book called Atomic Habits.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, I was like those little improvements, I want to make $1 million, but what if I made like $1,000 a month every month, and then started getting going? Those kind of things, little improvements, and I've used that a lot, especially in my business or in coaching, whether it's business or sports, because a lot of the athletes, they want to go from just being, regular hockey player or lacrosse player to superstar. I'm like, no, you don't have to go from here to there. Just got to get a little better every time. And it's okay to make mistakes. We just don't want to make the same ones over and over again. Like coaching female athletes, I cannot count how many times they apologize to me about making a mistake. I'm like, no, let's go make mistakes. Make lots of mistakes. Because if you stop making mistakes, I have nothing to coach. So
your chats are you're not learning either.
Yeah, you're not learning. You're not trying anything new. And I'm like, well, mistakes cause coachable moments is what they do. I call them coachable moments, right? So, or whether I've had before teams that were challenged, not good teams, right? So normally you might say, we've got this really bad team. But the language I like to use is we call it an opportunity-rich environment. So when I tell my other coaches, I say, well, how's your team this year? It's an opportunity-rich environment. I haven't had one of those for a while. I've had a lot of the same athletes for a while, so I have some high performers for sure, and just keep growing and growing with them. And it's been challenging me. It challenges me to grow too, because they're keeping up to my skill level or my knowledge level. So I'm like, I got to go find some more people so I can keep ahead of them, keep teaching them. But opportunity-rich environment. That's how I like to frame it. Yeah.
I'll have to remember that next time I talk to a couple of my friends' kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What are the opportunities, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I feel like I've taken a lot of time of your day, but again, I appreciate it, and I hope you'll consider coming back.
Oh, I'll always come back. This is great. I love this. I love talking leadership. I like talking about the industry and the history and the way people interact. I think that's important. It's becoming a big part of my life, and trying to make sure things are rewarding. And I like hanging out with good guys, and you're one of them. So
we'll keep up with the LinkedIn post, because you do come off as very polished, but that authentic thing, it does shine through the video camera. So I would definitely keep it on.
I'm getting better on the video. The first few videos we did, so we had a campaign with our with our LinkedIn or Finley inspection. Nobody really knew who we were. We're a small company, working for some of the biggest multinational companies in the world. Little small boutique company that nobody knew who we were. So the first 6 months, I spent about a year program. So the first 6 months was just kind of some brand recognition, getting people to know who we were, that we existed. The next 6 months, we're kind of getting a little bit more about what makes us different. Now it's hard to say we're different. Everyone says we got good guys. Well, we got the reputation to back it up and do it. So it's kind of hard to paint that picture. But then the other part of that is the quality and integrity. And the only other way to show that is by showing a little bit more about me. For sure. So when I did some of the first few videos, just kind of telling the history of the company, I mean, oh, thank God. These guys made me look good on video, because I thought I'd be okay. I'm a pretty good public speaker. I've spoken in front of some good crowds and smaller groups, but I was like, it was awful. I had a terrible time on camera. I have a ton of respect, especially now for my youngest daughter, who models and is doing all these crazy photos and poses. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. So I've gradually gotten better. I find that I'm much better on the sort of like this type of thing as opposed to the scripted work. So I just shot my last round of videos for my Game Changers little thing, which is again the connections between sports and business. So my guest was Jay McNeil, who's the president of the Calgary Stampeders, former football player, Grey Cup champion, who's also in the energy industry for a long time. Worked with Trinidad Drilling and where else was another one of the companies, Secure, I think, or anyway. So he has an extensive career. So I shot that last one, and then I'm meeting tomorrow for my next batch of videos, which I think are going to maybe try and feature a little bit more about me, not about me, but about sort of my philosophy and things, and some of these cheesy sayings I say, like the way you do everything is the way you do everything. So those kind of things.
But it matters, Rob, because like you are the face of Finley. So I think it's super important.
Yeah, it's just kind of, reveal a little more about myself, and I think that's, I'm trying to show that, and hopefully some of the clients and customers go on some of these things, some of the things that are away from, the pure business stuff, so that they can see, what I'm like. I take maintaining the family name of the company very seriously. I hope that we can keep this company running for a good long time, and I think that's important. And like my dad built it on my mom on honesty and integrity, and I think I want that to come through. And I struggled for a long time on how to show that, and then some of it's kind of just revealed itself by itself with these opportunity rich environment. Someone said, hey, you want to do some videos, you want to do this, and so that's it's come up that way, and just kind of going to run with it.
I'd like to sit down at some point when one of your kids gets more involved with the company, because it's, I'm not saying it's a guaranteed, but there's a likelihood that one of the kids fumbles their way into it.
Well, there's one that's on the verge of it now. I mean, the oldest one's an artist, and she's actually had a huge successful week. She actually had a bunch of her art purchased by the director of the National Art Gallery. So it's a
wonderful,
huge accomplishment for her. And art is a challenging world. So I'm really proud of her and super excited for her. And then I've got one who's a whippersnapper, young nurse who's kind of progressing her through her career as well, and has lots of opportunities. And she's talked about dermatology, like as a doctor and things like that. She used to say that when she was a kid, and we'll see how she goes. And then the youngest one is, working as a professional international model. She seems to have a lot of the personality, I think, to deal with the human side of our business, which I think is really important. She's really good at that, very intuitive. So she's doing a sales course right now. So she's the one who would probably be the most likely fit. Not that she's being pushed in that direction at all, but you never know. So we'll see. She seems to have some interest. She survived working at an engineering company, a great engineering company here in town, because there are some. You need, when you talk about the different generations, you need to have some adaptability to work within our industry, right? It's still that way, so so we'll see where it goes. You never know.
Yeah, but just before we got on, we walked in the door. I was talking to Rochelle, and we had a really neat conversation where, basically, it was like, I think we have good kids, and it wasn't the pat on the back, giving ourselves a pat on the back. It's more like, how did they get that way? And we're trying to figure out, because we don't think it's all us. We had an influence.
Well, they're all different too. Mine are very different, super different, right? And then, I mean, my wife is a teacher and talks about the formative years, and really it's kind of up to 12. So those are how do you treat people? There's all the, do the right thing, those kind of things. You get to that point, and then it's kind of what they experience through life and the challenges they have and how do they react to it. And a lot of it, I think, is how we may have not taught them directly, but they see how they interact. They see how you speak to your wife. They see how you speak to workers, especially with us as our businesses, these kind of family type businesses where you get a little more exposure than the old days where dad went off and worked at the bank and he came home and nobody really knew what dad did. We're all connected to our phones 24/7. Your kids have heard you on the phone. They probably heard you go up one side and down the other side of another guy, but they've also probably heard you pat him on the back too, and say this was a great job, and your positive nature came through, right? So they learn those things. They say, oh, well, there's a time when you got to bark, and there's a time when you don't. So I think that they observe some of that, and then getting them off on their own too, living their lives. I know you're a couple years away at school, and that's a big time in their lives to go and fly from the nest, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing, and I think they're going to land on their feet. They're confidence of a lion, and hopefully that doesn't get dampened too soon.
Yeah, exactly.
You never know how far they'll go with it.
Yeah, and I think I've been trying really with my kids to mentor them, like some of the stuff that my dad was like, again, the kind of the hard old school way, figure it out for yourself. I try and give them a little more of the stuff that I wish I had got. And one of my favorite sayings was, the older I get, the smarter my dad gets, because I know he did try to give me some things and I just didn't listen. So because you got to find out along your way. I have that with my daughters are all like strong, independent young women, and there's times where I go, oh, I wish I could you just didn't push back so much. But then I go, you know what? For all that goes away really quickly, because I want to know that they're going to be able to take care of themselves, and I know that they can, because they do have that pushback, and that comes from some from me, but let's not kid ourselves. Plenty of it comes from my wife, so nobody rocks on her either. So which is a good thing.
No, I like that. The mentoring thing, I know we've harped on it a lot already, but I've been thinking about it so much lately, and I don't know if it's because I'm a middle-aged dad or what's causing it, but I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it, and what's helped me is reaching out to some of these people.
Like people you think who might need some mentoring?
No, more people who have helped me along the way in the past,
yeah.
because I've never, as a younger guy, I really looked up to them, and they really helped me out, and they made time for me and all these kind of things. But for whatever reason, either it's confidence or I just didn't know, I've never told them how much that time they meant for me. It meant a lot to me, and some of these old boys unfortunately are gone now,
right?
And I'll never get that chance, but I'm definitely trying to do that more myself. And I'm encouraging kind of others to do the same.
Attitude of gratitude, right? So be grateful for that. And some of them didn't probably even realize they were mentoring you. That's just the way they did
I'm sure.
Right?
I'm sure they did.
I mean, especially these old boys, mentoring. What's that? Like, we don't even talk about that. Mentoring, coaching, those kind of things, development. We don't talk about that. This is just the way it should have been, and it's good to have those things that pass down. So yeah, I mean, I think it's yours and mine, our obligation for the people who did that for us to keep doing it, and to try and grow it. I want to make more mentors. Like that's the whole point of it, right? Yeah, and that's even when you're, like I said, when you're coaching athletes too, or you're teaching anybody. A lot of times, and I learned this from my teacher wife, is being able to teach it to somebody else. So you can, whether it's a sports thing, we do it on the board. There's the multiple ways you write up on the whiteboard. Some girls just don't get that. We got to walk through it. We walk through it. We talk about it. We do hands-on things. But then, okay, now it's your turn to explain this to somebody else. And you can explain it any of the 5 different ways that you can explain it. But can you explain it to somebody else? So when you can, that's sort of that's when you have this level of mastery almost, right? So getting people to mentor others, that's demonstrating your mastery of the skills that you've learned, right? So trying to get people up to that point is important, and encouraging them to do it. Make more mentors. That's the whole point, right? Leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. So that's the same concept.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start words by Rob.
I'm the king of the cheesy liners. My girls love it. Like sometimes they go, a lot of wah wah. Like, that's okay, Dad. Not another one. So I mean, I will honk our little horn here. We, Alberta won back-to-back national lacrosse championships in U22 women's. We never won one before. Now we've won 2.
Amazing.
Last one was in dominating fashion. Didn't lose any games and crushed the other teams. Had 5 of the top 10 or 7 of the top 10 scorers.
Good on them.
But as we lead up to the gold medal game, first of all, the attitude is we have our schedule online. You have to check off your availability. So we measure the players by who checks no to the bronze medal game right away. We all check yes, we will bet the gold medal game before the tournament even starts. We always check that we're going to be there. We ignore the other one. We won't be there. And then in the lead up to those games, I save as I go. I find them on LinkedIn. I find them wherever, all the different sports or business clips about the success and how the Michael Jordan quotes and the Kobe Bryant quotes and the Mike Tyson ones or whatever they are. I save all those clips, and then as we lead up, I just spam the stuffing out of the girls on the contacts, and they love them.
But I believe in that. So I did it about 3 years ago. I stopped following all the politics, and I love politics.
Yeah.
I'm very, very interested.
Yeah.
Follow very closely. But a few years ago, I remember I had to I followed off my social media because I was like, this isn't healthy.
Yeah.
And now after the fun entertainment of the American election, which was a blast to watch, it was pure entertainment. I think I'm at the point of, again, I was like, you know what? I'm interested, I'm invested, I'm involved, but this isn't healthy for me. Right. So when you talk about positive, those cool, I believe in that stuff. Yeah. How it gets into your head or your heart, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's something to it.
There's something to it.
Yeah, there is some science to it. Like, there's a reason. I don't know why, that 3-line statement always just hammers into me for whatever reason. And often doesn't matter what the graphic is; it's the words for some reason. And I love those things. So I mean, I try and put them all over the place for the athletes, especially, and a lot of it filters into the conversations I have. I mean, I use again, that's that whole podcast I'm doing, the connection between sports and business. Like, it just runs through my life. I mean, I played 3 different sports at semi good levels, and I always took it serious. And I'm not that great an athlete, so I had to do all the hard things, like I had to work hard, and I had to have a good attitude. So I think that sort of that's why it transforms or runs throughout my life with the things I use on my athletes that I coach are the same things I use on the people who work for me or the people that I coach executive level coaching as well. So it's ingrained, I guess. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Robin, I think we're out of tape.
Okay.
Brother, I appreciate your time and look forward to next time. Right?
Yeah, awesome. This is always good.
Ciao, ciao.
Yeah, you bet. So fun.